pleasure to welcome back somebody who looks like she's going to be a pretty regular guest here, and that's Carmel Flint from the Northern Inland Council for the Environment. We recently spoke with Carmel about coal seam gas exploration around the Pilliga scrub area and probably more generally in New South Wales. She's back again. Now, Carmel, you mentioned last time there were some areas that the council was particularly interested in looking at. Would you like to perhaps talk to us about some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a few things we've been following up on in the Pilliga in relation to coal seam gas. So what is proposed in the Pilliga is for a gigantic gas field of 1,100 wells and 1,000 kilometres of pipeline.
Is that all in the state forest?
Almost entirely in the state forest. Some of it extends out onto a bit of private land and some into a state conservation area.
Okay, well, before we go any further, how much clearing would that require of the state forest?
Well, the estimates of the company were that would be 2,400 hectares of bush, which is a very significant area. And the important thing about the real impacts out there are that it would carve the bush up, basically, and industrialise what is an incredibly intact piece of bushland. So basically, it would be on a sort of 500-metre grid. Every 500 metres, there would be a gas well. Between those gas wells, you need pipelines and roads, and that would spread out across 85,000 hectares of land. So that's an immense area. And the impacts on the Pilliga forest would be really significant. For those who don't know, the Pilliga forest is this amazing patch of bush. It's our largest temperate woodland left in eastern Australia. So it's in the extraordinary...
Oh, it won't be for much longer.
That's right. No, it won't be. It's in the extraordinary wheat sheep belt where we've almost cleared 90% of our veg for farming, and the Pilliga is basically the largest intact remnant left. And you can actually see it from space. It's amazing. Every night on the weather news, you see this amazing patch of bush out near Narrabri, and it stands out extraordinarily, and that's the Pilliga forest, if you want to know. So keep an eye out for it on the weather. And there's all kinds of wildlife in that, as you'd imagine. It's an incredible refuge for species whose habitat has been cleared all around that area. It's an amazing remnant in a sea of cleared land. So we've been doing work on a lot of the animals that live in the Pilliga and looking at how important that area is for them and what impacts the gas field will have on them. And we've gone out and engaged independent experts to do this work. So we're keen to talk more about the results of that.
Well, that sounds like a lovely topic. It's interesting you talking about all that clearing and the impact. We recently had Daryl Jones talking to us about the value of land bridges over big roads like Compton Road. And something they hadn't expected was the land bridge made it possible for little birds that will not cross open spaces, which for about 20 years or so, because of the big roads, had actually divided populations from one side to the other, weakened the gene pool because of the decreased breeding, and now things were just on the up. Sounds like you could be on the down.
Well, that's right. Fragmentation is a huge issue with wildlife. So if you create barriers to movement, populations get split. There's more predation, so animals have to be out in the open for longer and they're more likely to get eaten by other predators. And also one of the biggest things, again, is the spread of weeds and invasive animals. So they spread out rapidly where there's disturbance like that. And if you're going to do a massive spider web across a whole area of land, that's going to create so many avenues for invasive species. So there's all these impacts on the wildlife out there.
I was under the impression that when companies wanted to go and do this kind of thing, there were all sorts of environmental surveys that were required to discover what was living there and what impact there might be. Did that occur? Or is that occurring?
Well, this is the question. The quality of those environmental surveys is really at issue. What we're discovering is that the work done for the companies is incredibly poor. And out in that area, even though the company had put in an application to the government to do this development, the amount of survey work that's been done to date in that area for wildlife is very minimal. We looked at all the results that were available on the public record and found just a huge gap in that area. There have been very few surveys done. And we thought, well, you know, the community has to know what the impacts are going to be, what animals are going to be affected, and we're going to get our experts out there. We looked at what the most recent company surveys had occurred in January of last year, of 2011. We had a look at the information we could get on those, and they basically admitted that they hadn't found the key species. So one of the most important species in the Pilliga is a gorgeous little mouse called the Pilliga mouse, and it's the only place in the world where it lives, just in the Pilliga. Beautiful creature, tiny, delicate little, it's got a reddish tinge and big feet, it's gorgeous. So the company had done surveys in January of last year in the heat of summer, which is not a good time to do surveys, and had not captured a single Pilliga mouse. And we thought, well, this area looks like good Pilliga mouse habitat. It's its core population in the country, and we think it's there. And we want some independent surveys to ascertain whether it is. So we got a group of extraordinary scientists who came out and did the work pro bono to get our own results out there.
And what did you find?
Our experts, they did a very heavy trapping effort for the Pilliga mouse, and they put it into 10 different sites, and they recorded the Pilliga mouse at 8 different sites. They went out in spring, which is a good time to survey. At those sites, they captured in total over about 5 days 30 individual Pilliga mice, including some females who indicated they were about to breed. So it was definitely a breeding population. They found it in a number of different habitats. But the amazing thing about the Pilliga mouse is that it's really associated with wildflowers. It loves the low heath and the diverse heath, which in spring just bursts into flower, because the Pilliga mice eat seeds. They're mostly seed eaters, and they need obviously a diverse flora that flowers sort of year round. And so you find them just and in spring it was all in flower. The Pilliga was gorgeous, and that was just a bit like a fairy tale, really, this beautiful mouse living in this gorgeous wildflower wonderland. So that's where the Pilliga mouse lives. And our experts found them in a lot of different vegetation types. So they found it in areas where brown bloodwood was the tree and the heath was very dense underneath. They found it where the scribbly gum, there's a scribbly gum out there, they found it there, and also in an ironbark type. So basically the results are really significant. They confirm that part of the Pilliga where Santos want to put their gigantic gas field is basically incredibly core habitat for this unique species. It only lives in the Pilliga. The damage that gas field will do is sort of unthinkable, really, to such an important and iconic species.
Excellent research there, not only showing that the little animal is there, but the fact that the kind of vegetation it requires is also there and therefore also needs to be intact. Look, Carmel, this sounds so like what happened over in Western Australia with James Price Point, where Woodside and the Western Australian government did surveys of that area, didn't find bilbies, didn't find all sorts of things. So then scientists came in, particularly one from Victoria, and not only did they find bilbies, but they photographed them and showed that there were babies there as well. So, but as that scientist said, look, it's not that the scientists who were working for Woodside were bad or wicked. It's just that they're given such a limited time and very little resources to carry out a survey over an incredibly large area, and they're not necessarily given a decent time of the year to do it.
No, that's exactly right. So there were a number of problems with the surveys that had been done to date out in the Pilliga by the companies, and they were the wrong season. They weren't very long surveys. You know, they probably, I think some of them may have been hampered by rain. But we also do know that these species are very cryptic Australian animals. They're hard to find. They're mysterious. And you do really need experts. The thing about the Pilliga mouse is they can be very hard to trap. You need to set the traps just right to get them. And we had the experts there to do that. But in a lot of cases, the proponents employ companies that don't have that expertise. They're employing people straight out of uni, environmental scientists, who just haven't got the experience in wildlife survey, which is a very specialised field, to get the results that are necessary. And you need to put a lot of time in, and you need to know where to focus your survey effort to get good results. But we're not finding the companies doing that. And I also think they're not motivated to do that because they don't want to create environmental impediments to getting their projects through.
Well, that's one species. Did this have any sort of negative impact on the companies' surveys?
Well, at this point, our experts are still writing up the results, and we intend to then present this to state and federal governments and to put a lot of pressure on them to use the results of that work. But at this stage, there's been no no sort of changes to the practices out there. At the moment in the Pilliga there is significant exploration taking place, coal seam gas. It hasn't moved to a production phase yet. But, we will be presenting that information to government and we want to see them act on it. It's incredibly important. We also found out there a lot of other species. So in the week of work, the scientists found about 21 threatened species, and they included the black-striped wallaby, which is a beautiful creature, and it really only occurs in 2 places in New South Wales, and the Pilliga is one of those. The southeastern long-eared bat, which is this amazing bat with enormous ears, basically is nationally threatened, and it has its stronghold in the Pilliga. It needs sort of very large areas of bush, and you don't really get it in smaller fragmented patches. And it loves that ironbark cypress woodland that you get out in the Pilliga. It, again, hadn't been recorded much in the gas field, but our experts captured it 16 times and confirmed again that the place they're wanting to put a gas field is just incredible core habitat for an incredibly significant threatened species.
I think one of the things that this research is showing is more power to that wise government a long time ago that made the Pilliga Scrub a national park. It obviously has been a place where wildlife has been able to survive and indeed flourish.
That's exactly right. So part of the Pilliga is a national park and the rest was made a state forest, which protected it from land clearing, and now it's under threat from coal seam gas, basically. But it was a really important act when they put that aside from clearing. Incredible wildlife has survived there, which is really in decline throughout the rest of the continent.
Well, what's the community doing about it, or how are you getting this message across to the wider state? I mean, it's awfully hard for people who are out there, even if you can see it on the weather map at night, to get people in the cities interested.
The amazing thing about the surveys that were done in the Pilliga was that the experts took a lot of photos of those animals and got some we also got the eastern pygmy possum out there, which is threatened in New South Wales. It's a gorgeous creature, so gorgeous. The experts got really great photographs of that and a number of other of the species. What we've done now is developed a really lovely website with lots of photos straight out from the Pilliga, all in flower, with all the animals, a lot of the animals that we recorded there. So people can go and have a look at that, and we've got a lot of info about what you can do to take action there. So it's www.stoppilligacoalseamgas.com.au, and that website, and especially under the Take Action tab, has a whole heap of info about what you can do, because one of the most important things, as you say, is to spread the word. The most important thing anyone can do for the Pilliga, because obviously there aren't people living in the Pilliga, it's a state forest, and the wildlife can't speak up and they can't go to government and tell them what they think about this development. So the most important thing you can do is to stand up for the Pilliga in your community, to go and let people know, to show them the website. We've got a little YouTube video there which has got beautiful images, really beautiful. Have a look at that, show it to your friends. Raise awareness about the Pilliga in your community and get on our mailing list, and we can hook you into what's happening out there. But yeah, a lot of people may not be familiar with the Pilliga, but what they do know about it is that it's really an icon of the Australian bush. They think it's out there protected, but unfortunately it's not, and we need to spread the word about the threats to it and the fact that we can stop this. We've stopped threats like this before to our most beautiful places, and we can do it again here in the Pilliga.
So long as we know about it. Now, can we have that website again, please?
Yeah, so the website is www.stoppilligacoalseamgas.com.au.
Okay, and I'll put that up on the website too.
Great.
Thank you very much, Carmel, and I do look forward to seeing your survey results published.
Yeah, it'll be tremendous. Thank you.
That's Carmel Flint from the Northern Inland Council for the Environment.